Good evening, everyone. I'm Pete. I'm the chair of the Supporters Club, and I'm hosting today's special event. We have a special On the Sofa event where we're going to be talking about Dick Mattick's soon-to-be released book about the 1962-63 season. As well as Vic Morgan, who's our normal host, we also have John Trollope. We did hope to have Don Rogers, but Don's feeling a bit under the weather, so won't be able to make it today. But I'm sure with John and with Dick and Vic, we'll have a great time. So let's bring Vic onto the stream. Hey Vic, how you doing?
I'm very well, Pete. Of course, I'll keep one eye on the FA Cup draw, which is about to happen. So as soon as we find out who Swindon have got in round 3, we will let you know. It's that simple.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
We're all as keen as anyone else to know, quite frankly.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's hope we get a good one.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm going to do is we'll bring Dick Mattick on and John Trollope. So if we can bring Dick and John on.
Here we are. Very good evening, gentlemen. How are we both?
Good evening. Fine, thank you.
Jolly good. Yes.
Great. Vic, I'm going to leave you guys now to have a chat. And as soon as we hear something about the FA Cup, I'm sure we'll interrupt it for a couple of minutes.
Right. Thank you very much indeed,
Pete.
Pete.
Thanks so much. See you later.
See you later. 42 years after Swindon Town joined the Football League in 1920, they went on to get their very first promotion in season 62-63. Dick Mattick, very good evening to you. John Trollope, very good evening to you.
Good evening, Dick.
Aye. Now then, Dick, this is a very special season that we're talking about. And just to warn you, I might interrupt you at any moment just to tell you what the cup draw is. You're both very keen to know, I know. But, Dick, this was a very special season, wasn't it?
Yes, it was first promotion. I call it first promotion because it was not only the team's first promotion, but it was a first promotion for so many of, well, all of the supporters as well, because Swindon had never been promoted before. And I've tried to include in the book the stories, a little bit of some of the reasons why people supported Swindon and why they were so overjoyed at the first promotion at last.
John, obviously this is a very important season for you too, wasn't it? And my goodness me, you played your part. 46 league games, a few FA Cup matches. You know, you played your part in this season, didn't you?
Yeah, it was it was the second season of the run of not missing a game for quite a few years. But I think the most thing that I liked was the fact that we had a lot of local lads playing, and we'd all come through more or less together. There was a couple a little bit older than, say, Mike Summerby, Erling Hunt, Terry Woodland, Roger Smart, and people like that. But that was a big thing. I liked it. We done it with some local youngsters.
Yeah, and that was, of course, Bert's Babes, who were known as. Bert Head, the manager.
Well, they said we were babes. I don't know about that, but I mean, there was about 7 of us, I think, sort of 20, 21 and under. You know, so it was a good time for the club. Obviously, there were circumstances during that season which were a bit difficult.
Yeah, we will talk about those circumstances because they had a major effect on the campaign for everybody, and one memorable game in which unusual footwear, I think it's worth saying, Dick, were worn, and were they the subject of controversy?
Well, I think one of the interesting stories which came to light when I was doing some research for this book, a very chap in his 90s now called Norman Sims, who taught Ernie Hunt when he was at primary school. And he was saying that Bert Head had a sort of almost like a tame referee who lived in the house next door to the county hotel, just across the other side of the entrance to the county ground. And he would, whenever there was a match was in doubt the night before, he would go and see this guy and say, well, could you come and have a look at the pitch and see what you know, whether you think we should play or not. And apparently on this particular evening, Bert had been over to him and seen him and spoken to him and said, can you come and have a look? But really, I'd really like to get this game on, you know. And I think the fact that he was, you know, he always knew he could get a free ticket at the county ground and that when he wanted, encouraged him to say, yeah, this is fine. But having said that, it was the official Football League referee came down in the morning and gave it the okay as well.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the winter of 62-63 in a minute. But at the start of the campaign, John, how were people feeling?
Well, we had a couple of seasons together because some of them made their debut well before me. Bobby Rodruff and Keith Morgan, they were like 3 years older, and then Ernie Hunt and Mike Summerby made their. So we were in our third season together, really, and I think we could see it started to pay off because we knew each other's game because we'd come through the younger age groups together.
Yeah, and that was a very important factor, wasn't it? And in terms of that, you had a great team spirit, I guess, as well, because, you were growing up together, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. I think that if you look at this teams that are successful, it is that they've got a togetherness, haven't they? And you never think you're going to lose. We didn't think we were going to lose. And obviously, as you spoke about the conditions, we overcome them.
You certainly did. Now, talk about the process of this, then, Dick, of putting a book together like this. Obviously, you know an awful lot about Swindon Town, probably more than most, I would say. The process of putting this together, how did it start?
Well, really, it came about with lockdown because I thought, well, we're not going to be seeing any football for quite a while, and I always thought, well, if I could go back and live again one season, what would it be? Which would it be? And the 62-63 season, possibly because I was young and had starry eyes in those days, that I thought this was the one I'd like to do. So I started reading about it. Paul Plowman was brilliant. He came around, he brought me some around football pinks, and we sat in the garden and read the football pink together. And it was then I thought, well, actually, there is a book in this because I'm enjoying this. And I think perhaps people who were there like me at that time alive would enjoy recalling some of those memories. And then I thought the other thing about it is I'd like to be able to show younger supporters how it was different, how it was the same, how it was different. And I must say, this season, since the new regime has taken over, I feel there is a little bit of a similar spirit going. I mean, that group had been together, as you say, and I thought one thing I did was I thought, well, I'll changes on from the previous team, and exactly the same team played in the first game of the season before. So there was this camaraderie, and it was local lads, as John says. I can remember, this would never happen now. I can remember being on Rodbourne Rec, playing with Ernie Hunt and Mike Summerby in the summer, 50 kids having a kickabout with the professionals, players. It just doesn't happen anymore. It wouldn't happen. But it did engender a tremendous spirit in the club of the young players together. And I think two things I mustn't go on, and I don't know if John would agree with this, but I think the fact that of that team, there are 4 members of that team whose children went on to play for Swindon. And the other thing is that there were only 2 or 3 older players, but those older players were very supportive of the young players. And Keith Morgan was saying to me, he said we were taking their jobs away, but he said they couldn't have been more helpful. People like Maurice Owen, Arnold Darcy, they couldn't do more to try and help you and to help them achieve their goal of becoming established professionals and winning promotion.
I should say we're about halfway through the FA Cup third round draw, and guess what? We're still not out of it yet. So the tension goes on, as it were. Liverpool have already come out. Chelsea have already come out. So we won't be playing those in the third round of the FA Cup. Everton have just come out away at Hull, so we won't be playing those either. What about that, John? It does seem to me now that, players are much more detached from supporters than they used to be. Is that fair to say in those days? Oh, Bristol City have just come out at home. Let's just wait and see. That'll be a tasty local derby. And is it? No, it's not. So they won't be playing Bristol City either. They'll be at home to Fulham. It does seem to me that footballers these days are a little bit more detached than you were in those days. Is that fair to say?
I think so, because after a game, the old supporters, they used to have a hut in the car park right on the end, and we used to go in for a quick drink after the game, which, people don't do that anymore. We were mixing with the support, and it was a very, very good supporters club in them days, and they certainly helped us. But going back to Dick's point, the older players of the team, certainly Arnold Darcy helped me when I first came in the side. I mean, he was a worker up and down, and he did help me a lot. And Morris talking to me from inside, sort of thing.
We should say at this point as well, pass on our best wishes after the loss of Frank Burrows last week. John, obviously a great player and a great colleague of yours, and much missed, a great member of that legendary team.
Oh, he was one of the mainstays. I think obviously the connection with Stan Harland in defence, they were the mainstays which allowed me to start getting forward a little bit, because they covered for me really. But he was a character, same as John Smith in midfield. And I look at players on the pitch now and I don't see a Frank Burrows or a John Smith. But that's my personal opinion.
Would you like to know the Swindon Town draw? I think you might. They're at home against Manchester City. How about that one?
Oof.
How do you fancy that one?
Can you get me a ticket?
It could be slightly similar then to the 62-63 season, because it took the league champions to knock us out that year.
City.
Go on, remind us who that was, Dick.
That was Everton in the fourth round.
Well, how about that then? A packed county ground on that weekend. And I'm guessing that might well be in line for a televised fixture as well. So Swindon Town versus Manchester City. Goodness me, what a tasty encounter that is. How about that, John?
Wanted a big team. The supporters I spoke to said we want a big team, so you can't get much bigger than that, can you?
You can't get much bigger than that. Absolutely not. Well, that's an
absolute draw and take them away.
Brilliant. That is something to look forward to over Christmas. And I again repeat my best wishes after the loss of the great Frank Burrows. So thank you for that little tribute as well, John. Right, now that's out of the way, and we can Manchester United are at home, by the way, as they always seem to be, and they'll be at home too. I'll just let you know, Aston Villa, so that's quite a tasty one too. Right, Swindon Town versus Manchester City, third round of the FA Cup. Something to look forward to over Christmas. Last time we were at home in the third round of the FA Cup, Dick, I believe we beat a Premiership team, Wigan Athletic.
Yeah, Wigan Athletic. Was it 2-1? Paul Benson, I remember scoring.
Yes, indeed, 2-1. Right. Go on, John.
Quality, Dick.
Sorry?
It's about the same quality of team, I think.
Right, let's talk about 62-63. Now we know what that draw is. Now, it didn't get off to the best of starts, did it, Dick? Really?
No, I mean, there's 7 out of 7. The first one of the chapters got 7 out of 7. It was basically they were getting a point here and losing a point there. Interesting, at that time in the season, you used to play home and away on alternate weekends. Alternate midweek. So if you played Coventry at home on a Tuesday one week, the next week you played them away. And we had a couple of teams. Coventry were one. I think Northampton might have been the other. We had games quite quick in succession, and they were quite tough opponents in some of those early games, I think.
What about those early stages then, John? How are you feeling?
I think any season you're always hopeful that you're going to start well. Sometimes you have a bad pre-season, but you start well, and sometimes you have a good pre-season and you start badly. But it didn't go quite to plan, I don't think, early on. But gradually, together with the weather, it came good.
Well, let's talk about the weather because, those of us who remember it, I just remember going out on Boxing Day in my dad's car for a drive and going along by the Milton Road swimming baths and seeing an Austin A35 in the wall of the A30. It was the first car accident I'd ever seen. And it snowed on Boxing Day, and then it snowed, and then it snowed, and then it snowed. Can you remember where you were on Boxing Day? John?
I think I was at the mother-in-law's.
So you weren't playing on Boxing Day in '62?
We probably were, but I can't remember where.
Do you know, Dick?
Not without I could refer to my book if you. No,
Yes, refer to your notes.
I'm going to refer to my notes. I got a feeling we weren't because there were only about 2 games played in the whole.
Probably Halifax away, was it?
I don't think it was that bad. Here we are on the 26th, the first. Well, we should remember that. No, 26th of December. No, we lost 2-0 at Bradford.
And now that's a very important statistic because 2-0 at Bradford. And that was kind of a bit like, if you remember Lou Macari's 4th Division team, they lost at Tranmere on New Year's, first game of the new year, and then went on this incredible run.
Yeah.
Was that the same for you?
Oh, I think so, yeah. But, you know, again, I'll go back to the weather because we were playing and a lot of teams weren't, you know, with the help of the footwear we had. But, you know, we tended to get some points together and we got well ahead. And it was up to the other teams when they played their games to catch up, which they didn't.
No, it was an extraordinary time. I mean, were you sort of unsure from day to day whether you'd be playing or not?
I think in then day you played in conditions. Well, you wouldn't play now, would you? Because, you know, even when the grass is a bit long, they say, you know, it's poor and all this. But I mean, it did help us. It did help us. So, you know, and I think when you look at the promotion season that year and the 68-69 Wembley final, the conditions weren't the best, were they? But,
they weren't the best. No, absolutely not.
It helped us in both.
I think the 62-63 was having a young side because they do say an old soldier's a cautious soldier. I think it's the same with footballers. If you're playing on an ice rink, you know, and you're thinking, I've got 3 or 4 years of my career left if I'm lucky, I don't want to lose them. Whereas, you know, youngsters are very carefree, chasing, you know, willing to chase everything. It was interesting with the Queen's Park Rangers game, actually. It was, you know, saying very one-sided, but it was only the last 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. And I think where Queen's Park Rangers had thought, well, we've lost the game, we're not going to break a leg as well. So let's just, you know, let's not throw bad and good money after bad sort of thing and lose our limbs as well as the match. But I think that was all it was. It was an enthusiasm and a fearlessness, possibly engendered by. I suppose John will tell us 1 or 2 stories about Harry Cousins and Bert Head, who you know, that if you were a young player, it was impossible to get injured. You know, injuries were something that happened to old players.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, we were just told to get up and get on with it and stamp on it or run it off or whatever the sayings were at a particular time. But you certainly didn't have the treatment that players get today.
No, I'll ask you about Harry Cousins in a second because he's one of the great names of Swindon Town. Just a reminder, if you haven't heard and you just joined us, Swindon Town will play Manchester City in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. Yes, you heard it right. Harry Cousins, then, John, an extraordinary. Peter's just sent this question: is what is the magic contained in the magic sponge? Now, I would imagine in the middle of winter in 1962-63, it's quite cold. So would you like a magic sponge placed on part of your body in that particular weather? Was that part of it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, whatever injury you had, the first thing was a cold sponge down the back of the neck. You know, whether you had a leg injury, the sponge went down your back first, you know, to get your alert, I think. But, you know, he got in your mind and he more or less told you weren't injured. Like Dick said, you know, he had that way about him, Harry. And I mean, some of the things he said, certainly to me, helped me in my career.
He was called Trainer, wasn't it? They were called Trainer in those days, but I'm guessing he was a bit more than that, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, he knew injuries, obviously, and so on. But, you know, I mean, he got great at kidding people. I won't mention the player. he had a leg injury, so he put him on the bench in the medical room, and he said he put this, I think, ultraviolet thing, you know, and all this in them days. It wasn't the machines they got now, and he said, I just got to go and see somebody for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. So he came back and rubbed his hand on the thigh and said, yeah, that'll do. And I think it was Kevin Morris, when he took over, he had a book, Harry, and it was Didn't Even Turn the Lamp On. So really, it was, he was getting in you felt it better. Oh yes, better, yeah. But you know, he was getting in your mind straight away. Yeah.
Kevin Morris always said he was a better physio than he was, because with all his qualifications, Kevin, he said he didn't have that ability to psych players into things. You know, it's a mental thing that he could.
Oh yeah, he used to say to people, they can't do without you. More or less, you know, if you were a bit up and down whether you were going to be fit or not, and he nearly convinced you should play because the team couldn't do without you. But you know, that's the way he was. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
You did have an incredible record anyway, didn't you? And I got a question from Martin, really, and he says, do you think your record will ever be broken? 770 league appearances for Swindon, isn't it? And over 800 in total.
Yeah.
I think Dean Lewington is sort of 59 behind you.
Yeah.
He's obviously in the latter stages of his career. Is he? I mean, it's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? To be able to get anywhere near it.
Obviously, he's got a chance. I mean, he's been there for, what was it, 1980, I think. So it's 41 years. So it's took somebody 41 years to get anywhere near. But he's got a chance because he's still in the team at the moment, I believe.
Yes, he is. And I think it's worth repeating that you would have had many more than that had you not got that broken arm at Hartlepool in 68.
Well, yeah.
So you could have got over 800 league appearances, thinking about it.
Yeah, you could have done, yeah.
Yeah, which is extraordinary. This is from Mark. Mr. Mattick was my history teacher at school. He was a great teacher. Great to see his continued involvement and support of the club. So there you are, an ex-pupil of yours paying tribute to you, Dick. Let's talk about this book then. Interviewing people and getting a hold of people. How difficult was it to get their input?
In some ways, it was easy in some ways with people like John and Don, because they're very approachable and they're here on the spot. But one of the things I tried to do is I tried to send as many of the players as I possibly could that are still alive a little questionnaire adapted to their particular circumstances. And unfortunately, I made a mistake and I sent the one that should have gone to Mike O'Hara to Mike Summerby. And Mike Summerby sent it back with some quite helpful answers. But one of which was, I never kept goal for the England youth team. And that's when I realised I'd made a mistake. But I think one of the things in those sort of questionnaires were very helpful, even though they were made, some people only made, 3 or 4 points. I think they were quite often vital. And there's two, one from Mike Summerby and one from Roger Smart, who sent his in quite late in the day. I managed to get hold of him. But about Bert Head's approach to coaching and that. And basically Mike Summerby said was, he would just say, go out and enjoy it. Go out and enjoy the game. Go out and enjoy it. And Roger Smart would say he would just make comments to individual players. Before a game at half-time, he wouldn't talk to the side. Bobby Woodruff, who was transferred to Wolves, he said, before the game, for his first match at Wolves, the manager, Stan Cullis, came into the boardroom, into the training room, clapped his hands and said, have a good one, lads. And Bobby Woodruff said that was the longest team talk I'd ever had, because Bert Head didn't do that. But he would talk, just make points to individuals.
How was that, John? I mean, we often hear about the teacups flying across the room and the hairdryer treatment, all that kind of thing. How was Bert Head?
Oh, he believed in the youngsters, because obviously we played in that practice game all together, and we beat the whatever possibles or probables. I don't know which was which, but and he believed in us, and he wasn't scared to throw the youngsters in, and I mean to get, as you say, 6 or 7 within 3 years of each other, that was tremendous. But I found Ellis Stuttard, who was his assistant when I first started, he helped me a lot, especially on the positional play and things like that. So they did work together. Ellis sort of come round to you and talk to you, where Bert was, more the firm man who, you do what he said. In fact,
when did you? Sorry, Dick, go on.
Yeah, in the player responses, there are more players mention Ellis Studdard as being the most important thing in their football development than anybody else.
Right, fair enough. Okay. When did you start to think? Well, you mentioned, John, about the fact that other clubs had to catch you up because of the games that you've been playing. When did you start to think, actually, we can do this? Because no playoffs in those days, of course. No. You either got automatic promotion or you didn't. Simple as that. When did you start to think you had a chance?
When it runners up went up as well. We finished runners up, didn't we? I think.
Yeah.
Because I think we got a number of points. Was it Coventry nearly caught us, or?
Well, Coventry. It got towards the end of the season, and it was from the supporters' point of view, it's quite worrying because Northampton had really got the championship sewn up, and it was a battle between 2 or 3 other teams, of which Coventry were one, and Coventry were 3 or 4 points behind, but they had a lot of games in hand, and I think it was a crucial night because Swindon were always sort of thinking, well, we've got home games that have been postponed, and we'll be all right because they were against sort of teams down the bottom of the side. Bottom of the league. We had Halifax home, and you think, well, this is a Stonewall home banker here, but we came up against a goalkeeper who was in tremendous form called Peter Downsborough, and we only got a point. But fortunately, I think the other teams that also dropped points, and then they went to Colchester, where Bert Head, who'd gone to the board earlier in the season. And he said, well, I've had an offer here for £10,000 for Roger Smart. 5,000 down, 5,000 when he plays dozen games or something. And you can have a player as well. And he said to the board, well, it's up to you. And the board said, oh, no, we don't want to send out a signal that we're selling our youngsters. So he was plunged into the game. I don't know if Cliff Jackson or somebody got an injury. And of course, he scored 2 goals. Scored 2 goals there.
This is from Steve. John, comparing to today, was it harder for youngsters to get into the first team? How many didn't make it back in the day? I mean, the fallout at professional football level is quite big anyway, isn't it? So what would you say is the comparison between them?
I think it's quite a big difference because the top end is so... they got so many international players, foreign players, which weren't around in our day. So the local youngsters got a good chance to prove themselves. Now, I mean, to me, the Premier youngsters go down championship go down and down. So really, to get youngsters through at a lower division club now, because there's so many other clubs who they're looking to get first team football, because they don't play the reserve football like we used to. So
well, that is another factor, isn't it?
In our day, it was much better because you had a chance to get through.
Yeah, we're talking about Man City today because obviously we've drawn on the FA Cup at home. But that's a difference, isn't it, Dick? In those days, of course, there was a football combination as well, wasn't there, where you were playing some of the top teams in the country.
Well, there's just not just a football combination. There were sort of A teams as well, A teams and youth teams, and there was one Saturday where the Swindon won, Swindon Reserves won, and the A team played a team called Peasdown Miners Welfare, I think, and they scored 20 goals. Never mind Latvian women, it was 20 goals in one match, and I think John Stevens And of course, in those days, if you were, whereas nowadays the youngsters play against other youngsters, the youngsters then who were in the reserves or the A team were playing against fully grown men, which was probably toughened them up, I would think.
Well, I think it's all part of the development. And looking at academy football, you play at schoolboy level, you play at youth level, and you play at under 21 or 23, whatever it is. And you're still playing against the same people and your own age group. And I think sometimes you need that challenge of playing against more senior players and playing with senior players. Because you do, like we were talking about Arnold Darcy helping me and Morris Owen. And I think youngsters need that when it's actually happening. So yeah, it's hard for youngsters today. I think you got to be a real top-notch youngster. You know.
I actually, you can draw. You can look at Tyree Simpson this season, for instance. Young kid, 19 years old, coming from Ipswich, and playing against, let's be honest, Grizzly League Two defenders. That's a big learning curve for somebody of that age, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is. I mean, and that's what he needs. He doesn't need to play against lads his own age, because he's either better than them, and now and again he might get up against one that's got the better of him. But I think by playing in the first team here, I mean, that can only do him good.
Yeah, this is from Malcolm. Do you remember, John, the documentary 6 Days to Saturday being made, including great footage of Burthead singing on the coach? It was the director who went on to direct Deliverance, if I remember rightly, famous for dueling banjos. And there was this wonderful scene of you on a plane going to Preston, I seem to remember. Dick, you would certainly remember that, the old black and white documentary, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do. I remember that. And the thing that was most incredible, you can still get it, I think, on YouTube. You can still see it on YouTube. Was Burthead reading out the team on the Friday, reading out to the press and team on the telephone, and the crowds. Everyone had a hat on, and there was cigarette smoke everywhere. But it was, I think it was Burthead just reading out the team. No sort of waiting for it to be announced an hour before kickoff.
No.
It was very carefully announced. The day before to the press and that.
Do you remember that, John? I mean, it was an early.
We took off from South Marston actually. I think it was an old Dakota or something like that. That was a novelty in our day.
I was going to say. Yeah, I was actually quite surprised that actually you did fly to a game when I watched the documentary, and I'm not talking out of tune here, school here, but one or two players were smoking on that plane, if I remember rightly. Is that right?
Well, I think some did smoke in those days,
Yeah.
and drank as well. That was the times,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Dick, you were going to speak? You were going to say?
Well, I was going to say Gordon Atherton, who was the wing half and played a couple of years later, about 64, 65. He used to run out onto the pitch with a cigarette. And that was the last thing he did before he sort of kicked the ball on the ground, was to stub his cigarette out.
Yeah, I think sometimes people got mixed up because we used to have a little smelling capsule, and it was white and it was about that long. And you used to break it and then do that. So whether people got mixed up, that I haven't seen anybody ever go out on the pitch smoking, but I can remember these capsules. You used to break it, as I said, and give it the old,
I've seen many a goalkeeper in the Sunday League play smoke whilst playing, I have to say. Mainly whilst they're playing the teams that I've been in. So he's had plenty of time to have a fag, quite frankly. Now let's talk about that season then. As it develops, where is the feeling in it? You're on this run, you're doing very well. Are there moments when you're beginning to think, oh, crikey, we could get promotion here, and then suddenly think, oh, crikey, we might bottle this? Were there any moments like that?
No, I don't think so. I think we played the conditions, we got the points, and and we just kept going. And then obviously we had to wait a bit because other teams were playing, obviously Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and catching up on us. So we just hoped that they didn't catch us.
There was quite a challenge bit on Roger Smart's reply to my questionnaire. I put on the most of the words. When do you think you had you were going to get promotion? You had a chance of getting promotion, and he put when I scored against Shrewsbury, which was about a minute from the end, and it clinched promotion. If we'd have drawn, we'd have still been, we'd have had to lose, and everybody had had to win everything. Yeah. But it made such a difference to know it was absolutely done, dusted, tied up on your home ground, sort of thing.
Yeah. Actually, we're playing Barrow away on Saturday, John. I think Barrow played a big part towards the end of the 68-69 season, if I remember rightly. Is that right?
I can't remember that bit.
Dick, do we win up there late on in the season, around about Easter time?
Barrow away.
Yes.
68-69.
Yes.
I don't think so. Barrow away, we won 3. February, 15th of February, we won 3-0 up there. I'm trying to think. Barrow, I seem to remember when we played them at home that year, it was a lot closer. What did we do to them at home? I got a feeling that their goalkeeper had a very, very good game that day. It was the last game in that season. We played them at home the last game, but by that time we won promotion already.
Yeah,
but we played them away and won up there, which made it.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to leaving here at 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday to go to Barrow. Really looking forward to that. We talk about team spirit. I mean, just before you go out, what does Burthead say? We've already heard that he doesn't say a lot. So were there any words of, come on, boys, let's get out there? And were there any of that, or was it just quietly get on?
Not really. No. They didn't go through things like they do today. And, like Dick said, some of the other players have said he just used to say, well, let's get at him and things like that. And, just G you up, really, just little individual comments.
I think there was a time, because I don't know if I'm making too much of it, but this was somewhere around the middle of the season, before Christmas, I think, that Burthead wasn't at a match. Swindon played Bristol City away, and he wasn't there. Now, I don't know if John knows that, but he wasn't there. Now, had he gone scouting or whatever? But looking in the board minutes, it said that Burthead had asked about his contract, which came up for renewal in January, and the board had said, well, we're not going to do anything about that at the moment. So whether he thought, I don't know, perhaps I'm going to get the chop here, and he went to speak to another club, I don't know. But Swindon got a point at Bristol City, which was quite something in those days, because Bristol City were a strong side, and they never seemed to look back on that. But he was very supportive after that of the team, and saying how it didn't help that sometimes the fans were critical and the press was critical and wanting, go out and spend money. And he said, there's no point in spending money to get somebody who's no better than we've got here at the present. And he said, the trouble is, either you've got to pay wages that we can't afford, and you bring somebody in and it creates dissension. And he very much said, Rome wasn't built in a day. Be patient, give these lads a chance, they will mature. And he was right.
That principle still holds firm now, though, John, doesn't it? I mean, you've been obviously in the managerial game. You wouldn't bring a player in unless you thought it would improve the squad.
No. I mean, it's like you can't just get rid of somebody and then bring somebody not as good or just as good. You're always looking to improve, because that's what it's about. And you can get rid of players and not replace them, and all of a sudden the team, it's happened here where certain players have gone or other players have come in on more money. So Bert, I mean, he kept our feet on the ground, to be fair. He never let us get above ourselves.
We should mention a young player comes into the team and makes his debut in that season. Had 10 appearances, 2 goals. Made his debut in a 4-1 win over Southend. 7 league appearances, and then a first goal and 3-1 win over Notts County. A certain Don Rogers makes his debut. When you first saw him play, John, what were your thoughts?
Well, you could see right from when he first come into the club. I mean, he hardly said anything, but you get the ball at his feet, and I mean, you wouldn't want anybody better, to be fair. Having played behind him for nearly 10 years, I think, by the time he'd come in and gone, obviously, to Crystal Palace, you just wonder how he used to float over the grounds we played on. Tremendous talent. You could see that right from when he first come in the club.
He didn't run, Dick, did he? He glided. I always thought that was he just sort of seemed to run across the top of the ground. He never actually touched it, it seemed to me.
Well, I compared him to being like an ocean liner, that he sailed over the ground. And I mean, John was saying about Burthead keeping players, on the ground and that. I think he certainly did that with Don Rogers. So I'll tell you something which won't happen when we play Manchester City. I will guarantee, even if it is bad weather, none of the players who play in the game will have to clear snow off the terrace on the morning of the match. Don Rogers had to do because he was an apprentice professional.
Yeah.
Wow.
And didn't make any difference. You get out there and you shovel snow, son.
Well, in that 62, 63 season, obviously with the snow, I mean, we were on there clearing snow, and I think Bert had a sleeper tied to the back of his car and trying to drag some of the snow off. I mean, that was just, and the players were helping as well.
I always remember I worked a lot with the late great Ken Furphy in Devon, and he always tells stories of when he was at Workington, and in the back of the bus they used to have a shovel that they had to, so they would often have to dig their way out of roads with snow. I mean, how bad was travel in those days, John, in that winter?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can remember getting stuck coming home from Hull, and we dug the bus out, other cars out, and everything, and then a local reporter said, "Yes, we dug him out," and he was sat in the coach all the time while we were doing it. I won't mention his name.
No, okay.
You got a mission.
Amazing. Yes, I just think we don't really know these days, Dick, how life was in those days, do we? We can't really sort of relate to how they were now, because it's a totally different scenario, isn't it?
Well, there's lots of things that are better and lots of things that were harder. Right. I think it's nice to have lived long enough to have seen both.
Yes,
and that's something I sort of think that is great. That you look back at these players, and I mean, one of the things I'd like to ask John really is what he thought. I know my opinion, and how would you compare the 62-63 team to the one that won the Football League Cup?
I'm asked this often, and I don't think there was much in it. They were slightly different, and I mean, I favoured the 62-63 because I played every game, and also we had the local youngsters. But certainly the 69, I mean, I was in the stand for most of them because, as you said, in the cup run, I only played in the first and last round. So I was a spectator in the other 10. So really, they were a good side. I mean, by then, I think more organisation had come into the game, whereas in the early 60s, it was nearly off the cuff stuff,
I mean, I would say that the individual players in the 62-63 season were better, but as a team, the 68-69 season team, if the two had played at their peak, the 68-69 might have won because they were better organised. And I mean, Frank Burrows, bless him, he did me a diagram of the way that team played, and who went where, and there was John here, and there was John running around there, and Don running, and it was much more planned out and organised, it seemed, than the 62-63. But they had the probably more talented individual players. And one player I think that I'm mentioning in the book, and I think we should mention and think about is Terry Woodland, because he was a very talented young player, and his career was ended by a dreadful tackle. And I think nowadays we say, well, things are better, things are worse. One of the things I think better now is, I suspect with the medical treatment today, he might have played again and had some kind of a career.
Were you the youngest pair of fullbacks in history, weren't you, John?
We were at that time. I don't know whether it would. I mean, I was 17 in the June, and Terry was 17 in July, and we made our debut in the August. So, and we were at that time the youngest pair. Yeah.
And didn't you score within a minute or two of each other?
No, that was Owen Dawson.
Owen Dawson.
At Mansfield. I remember that because I didn't score many, Dick.
It's a question from David. John, who was the best right back you played with?
Who I played with?
Yeah.
I would say Terry Woodland. He was far better than I was. Because I was moved back from midfield where I wasn't good enough. They had a spare position at left back in the practice game, and that's how I came a left back, really. But Terry was a super player, and as Dick said, if it hadn't been for the injury, he'd had a long career here as well. If he hadn't gone, because he might have been good enough to go on. But there was other fullbacks who came in. Owen Dawson was a nice, steady player, But Rob Thomas,
I was going to say 30 caps for Wales. So
it was in that time. He nearly made a 3 central defenders, which allowed me to go up and join in, because he stayed at home a little bit more than I did, and he joined Frank and Stan as nearly a back 3, Dick. So different formations, like Frank probably showed Dick. We were very versatile in that team.
I was going to say 3 at the back. You think of that as kind of modern formation, don't you? A lot of teams play 3 at the back now, don't they? So that seemed to be in quite a modern formation in those days.
Yeah. Yes, it was. It was new, and one of the best, obviously, here was Glenn Hoddle's time. I mean, they were super playing with the 3, weren't they? But it's got to suit your players, isn't it? It's if you look at the players, and I was always told as a coach to look at what you've got, and it's no good playing a formation that don't suit, or your players can adapt to. So,
well, let's talk about from a supporter's point of view, Dick, because you were saying you were young in those days and impressionable, and by the way, Carl Webster says, "Hello, Mr. Mattick, you were a fine teacher." So there's another tribute from Carl. What about from a supporter's point of view?
Well, I think what is interesting, it's funny how there was a book by Nick Hornby about how your life, football supporters measure their life between, they put certain events with certain things that happen to them in their life and that. And one of the things is really interesting writing this book is, and I must apologise to those people who wrote in I didn't get back to with emails and that, because everything seemed to happen at once. So if you wrote in, thank you. If I didn't get back to you, my apologies. I've got some very good stories out of that, though. Just a couple. One is one lad who said, well, his dad was the one who got him watching football, but he went to see, his first away game was to see Bristol City play, and they went down, and it wasn't his father who took him. He went with his grandmother and grandfather, and his grandfather was a notoriously slow driver, but he got booked for speeding in Sutton Benger on the way to the match. And that is sort of like family history now, is all to do with that. And another lovely story about dear old Roger Bunce, who used to come in from Clanfield in a charabang, we called them in those days, not a coach, a charabang. And the young supporter who was talking about, I used to lift him up and put him on his shoulder so he could see. And I think stories like that about how people got into watching football. And even in my own family, we all had our own favourites. Within the family, they different people had different favourites. Mine was Ernie Hunt, Mum's was John, Cliff Jackson was Uncle's, Auntie's was Mike Summerby, and we all had their favourites. And if their player did well, they were the one that over fish and chips in the evening, they were smiling and that, because that was another lovely member of that season. Queen's Park Rangers match. I can't remember much about the game except it was very cold and we won. But I can remember sitting eating fish and chips down by the town hall for some reason. And I think we must have gone there because somewhere else was shut down because their electric had failed, and we don't have fish and chips by the town hall.
Marvellous. And actually, we talk about big crowds at the county ground now, John, but my goodness me, they do pale into significance compared to what you used to get. I mean, we're talking about 20-odd thousand most days, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I played out there before 32,000. Yeah. And I mean, there was benches on the track and everything, where in them days, so, but they never run on the pitch, did they, Dick?
No.
And that was how it was. I mean, as you say, most of them had cap, and the terracing was packed, wasn't it? So.
Well, they never ran on the pitch except the last game against Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
And they ran on when the goal was scored. And they said, "Well, the game will be abandoned if you don't get off." And you never seen people move so quick. Got off the ground.
Well, let's talk about that moment, because the season gets to a climax, and of course, you do get promotion, John. As a player, as a footballer, it's what you're there for, isn't it? You want to have a good career, but you want to get promotions, you want to get honours. And how was that feeling?
Oh yeah, everybody wants to play as high as they can, and I found the championship now, it was League Two in them days, Dick, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah.
And I found that easier to play in than I did the League Three as it was then. League One now or whatever.
Yes.
It is. You forget that you're still in level 3, rather than when we went up to level 2, as Dick said and you said, is for the first time in the club's history. And I mean, it was a great feeling to be part of that, because we as you said, Dick said, we all came through together. About 6 or 7 of us, and with Terry, it probably would have been one more, Dick, wouldn't it? So it was a great feeling to and the town. Well, they were, weren't they? It was a great time for the town as well.
And the start of the following season, they went to the top of the league.
Yeah, I remember.
In the first so many games without dropping a point, including defeating Manchester City 3-0.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Dick would have proven that next year, I suspect. But and I wonder if John's got any opinions on it. What was that something that was just a flash in the pan, or were there mistakes made, changes in the team that caused it to?
Possibly. I mean, the first season we set off great, and I remember the first defeat was Northampton, where they just kicked us off the park. They added some rugged players in them days, Northampton, and they beat us, I think, about 4-0, Dick, or something like that. But I think the first season we did okay, but I think we got the second season syndrome for some reason. Whether people worked us out or whatever, I don't know, but it just didn't seem to happen in 64, 65.
Yeah, and that meant going back to Division 3, and this is from Tony. I remember the home game against Watford. That was in 68-69, of course. A full house, Barry Indane scoring. It was on a Saturday night, if I remember rightly, with the aforementioned Ken Furphy as manager of Watford.
Yeah.
And they won the league on goal average, didn't they? This from Darren, local lads from the local club. Brilliant. Absolutely. And I think we always like it when a youngster comes through, don't we? Scott Twine's gone off. He's having a decent career now at MK Dons. We do like it when local players come through.
I just like to see more in the first team here. I think you get a rapport with the crowd. Your relatives are there, your friends are there. And obviously I think the supporters like local players, don't they? But it's not an era where you're getting those now, or not so many, are you? You're getting the odd one, but certainly not lower down. You don't get so many coming through now, do you? Because they filter down from the top.
I think one of the things in those days which helped Burthead a lot was the fact that the school setup was very strong. Fred Coleman was assistant manager of England schoolboys, and there was a lot of players, including John, who came through from the schoolboy team. You know, so, I forget how many in that team, 4 or 5, I suspect, had come through. Unheard of now to get that many in a decade, never mind in 1 year. And I think the whole setup in the town was a bit like that. You go down to Wales, they appoint PE teachers so they'll play for the local Rotary club. And there was a bit of a thing then, was if you got a job because you were going to take the school football team, and the people like my own head, George Gleed, I mean, they used to joke about me, saying, you only got the job, Dick, because he found out your mum played for Swindon Boys. But that's the sort of people that were running Swindon Education. They were heart and soul Swindon fans themselves, and they wanted to do everything they possibly could to bring players through.
I think with George and Fred, they made sure you come to Swindon.
Yes, obviously we've seen.
I think the heads can be turned. Well, not just the heads. I think the pocket as well. Yeah,
absolutely. This is from David. Did you, John, ever get offers to move to another club? I think we've talked about this before. I can't remember what your answer was, but have you?
No, I wasn't good enough.
No, which is not the right answer, because you clearly were.
You don't, like today. You got agents, and they probably been contacted by people and they tell the player, but in our day you wouldn't know unless the club wanted you to know. If they wanted to get rid of it, I'm sure they would have told me, but I just had a few rumors going around that so and so was interested, but no, it didn't happen, and I was happy to stay at the club.
Well, we're glad you did. Our time is coming to an end, Dick, so I've got to ask you how you can get hold of your book. When is it available? How is it available?
Right. Well, I hate making promises I may not be able to keep, but I've been promised by the printers the books will be delivered on the 16th of December, so they should be available for the match on the 18th. And what I'm doing is they will retail in the shops at £12.50, but they are available. I'm making them available to the supporters club, to the trust, and to the club shop for £10. Of that, £5 will be going to either Head for Change or for individual items for players suffering from dementia. And this is where our Rotary Club, with the duck race, we always try and encourage people to sell things to benefit, sell the duck race tickets to benefit their charity by giving them half of the money. Whatever the supporters club do with that other £5 is entirely up to them. So £5 that I get back, all of that will go to the charity, and the other £5 is for the sports club. They can decide what they do with that. The trust can decide what they do with that. The club can decide what they do with that.
And will it be available online via Amazon and other carriers?
I would think so, but probably not before the. I would suspect you struggle to get it before Christmas from them, because if you want to get it online, can I recommend Paul Plowman? Because Paul Plowman will have copies, and if he posts them out, he's going to give all the money to the charity except for what he has to charge in postage.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed, and it's been great to have your company, and an exciting evening as well. Not only talking about a promotion, but Manchester City at home in the FA Cup. You can't get a lot better than that, can you, Pete?
No, not at all. I think everybody's pretty excited about that from looking online. Great. Thanks very much, John, Dick and Vic. We are going to be back certainly on Monday the 20th following the home game against Warsaw. We're trying to see if we can get something done for next Monday. We're not sure yet, but definitely for the 20th. Great. Thanks very much, all. So we're going to see you in 2 weeks, and have a good evening, everyone. Start planning for that Man City game. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.